Okay, so welcome back. So now, we're going to talk about what's called formula rearrangement, but really what it means is variable isolation. Okay, so what we're doing is, you've heard me use the term isolating the variable. And so what we're doing is we're rearranging the formula, right, formula rearrangement, in order to isolate the variable that we're interested in, right, the one that we're trying to solve, so that it's on one side of the equal sign and then everything else is on the other side of the equal sign. So that's what we mean by formula rearrangement, right? We've got a formula, we want to solve it for another variable that's part of the formula. So we're going to isolate that variable on one side of the equal sign and put everything else on the other side of the equal sign. Okay? And so in order to do that, we're going to be using the axioms, right? So the axioms that we're going to be using is the addition axiom, right? So whatever you do to one side, if you add a constant to one side of the equation, you have to add the constant on the other side, the same constant on the other side of the equation. So to preserve that principle of equality that I've talked about. So, and then also in some cases we'll have to use the multiplication axiom, and where we have to multiply or divide the same constant, right? So again, we can add or subtract, right? So basically whatever you do to one side of the equation, you got to make sure you do to the other side of the equation. So if you add a constant, you have to do it to both sides. If you subtract, you have to subtract from both sides. If you multiply or divide, you got to do the same thing on the other side, okay? So that's what we're going to do to solve this one. So let's say we have this markup formula, okay? So we've got markup is equal to selling minus cost, right? So that's going to be the markup, right? How much you're selling it for minus the cost the amount of money it costs to produce it. And so let's say we've got the markup is equal to this, and we've got this formula, and we want to solve it for S, the selling price. So, well, if we use the addition axiom, then we want to isolate the S by itself. So we want S equals whatever. Well, how do we do that? Well, right now we're subtracting C from S. Well, to undo the subtraction, right, we have to use the operation, the inverse operation, right? So if we want to undo the subtraction of C, we've got to add C. And if we add C to this side, then we have to add C to this side. So the idea is we're going to use the addition axiom to get rid of the C that's over here. Or in other words, sometimes you'll hear people say moving the C to one side of the equation. So in order to do that, we've got, in this case, to add C to both sides, because then we get minus C plus C. Now sometimes you'll see it written like this. I write it both ways, but I see more students writing it this way. So, but when you do that, this is going to cancel. And then you're going to get what? M plus C is equal to S. Okay? Oops, not C, S. Okay? And so again, we can write it S equals M plus C. Okay? Now, another way to look at it is to see the addition axiom at work here is you could do it this way. Okay, so if I'm going to subtract C, I want to get rid of the C here, so I'm subtracting C. Well, let's just add C here, and if I do that, I have to add C over here. So you could do it this way as well. It's the same thing, right? So notice now what I got. I got minus C plus C. Well, what happens to this right here? That's just 0, right? So then I get the same thing. C plus M equals S. Okay, so just another way to write it out. Same thing though. Okay, see you next time.